Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate. How does the BJP view Parliament's response to Anna Hazare's demands, and where does it stand on his Jan Lokpal bill? Those are the two critical issues I shall pursue today with the leader of the opposition in the Rajya Sabha, former Law Minister Arun Jaitley. Arun Jaitley, let's start with the decision taken by both houses of Parliament on Saturday. Was it a resolution or was it simply a sense of the House statement?
Well, I think parliamentary flexibility gives you enough leeway. If you were to ask me in one sentence, I think it was a sense of a House statement, which in the text used the word resolved twice. So there is a genuine ambiguity, but I'm quite willing to accept it as a statement which indicates that it's a resolve on the part of the House.
All right, but what you're saying to me, despite the ambiguity, is that it is a sense of the House statement. It is not in the technical or in the proper parliamentary sense.
There was no proposer, there was no seconder, there was no voting. So when the statement is read out by Mr. Pranab Mukherjee and it uses the word resolve twice, the entire House thumped their decks in approval of it. And therefore, there is an ambiguity whether to call it a statement or a resolution, but it uses the word resolve twice.
Quite right. But the correct parliamentary term would be sense of the House statement.
I would think that's more appropriate.
Now, in his letter to Anna Hazare, the Prime Minister actually referred to this as a resolution. Would you therefore agree that he was inaccurate or at least not technically correct?
I think, as I said in the beginning, Parliament gives you and its procedures give you enough flexibility to call it a statement or a resolution, as long as all concerned political parties and Team Anna treated it as a resolution, even though it's a unanimous approval of the sense of the House as a statement. I think very little turns on this.
All right. Just to understand clearly for the audience, parties together, if they want, can treat it as a resolution, but technically it is a sense of the House statement.
As I said, it will be more accurate to call it a statement, but it's a statement which uses the word resolved twice.
Now, the second point about the sense of the House statement is it begins with the words, "This House agrees in principle." And then it goes on to resolve to forward the proceedings of the House to the Standing Committee. Does that mean this statement is a binding commitment or an expression of intent?
I would say it's a principled acceptance of the 3 points stated therein. Now, how the modalities are going to be worked out in details is a matter for the Standing Committee. It respects the dignity of the Standing Committee in as much as it doesn't give it a directive, but having accepted it in principle, it leaves the nuts and bolts of how it is to be framed to the Standing Committee itself.
So what you're saying is this is an in principle but general acceptance of the principles.
I would say that's more accurate.
But you're also suggesting that thereafter the devil lies in the details.
Obviously, the details can never be worked by the House in the first instance. It will have to be worked by the Standing Committee.
Let's then come to what is for many the key issue. What you're also saying is that how these 3 principles that are in the sense of the House statement finally emerge, we don't know at this stage. They may emerge as Anna Hazare wants them, but they may emerge in a different light altogether.
I think the 3 principles ordinarily would find a place in the final draft. They would find a place in a positive sense. The House is very responsible and so is the Standing Committee. I think it's a commitment before the whole country, and therefore the question of the House going back on it normally would not arise.
Quite right. The House won't go back on it, but they may not be fleshed out in quite the way Anna Hazare would want.
Well, I don't see any problem in the Citizens' Charter, for instance, being accepted. Whether it's a part of the Lokpal bill or it's an independent bill, that would be the only grey area. Either way, the effect of it would be the same.
All right, we've begun talking about Anna Hazare's 3 sticking points, and you started with the Citizens' Charter, which is connected to the grievance redressal system. Now, clearly, Parliament has the prerogative and power to create a Citizens' Charter and a grievance redressal system for central government ministries and departments. The critical question is this: does it have the power to legislate for state governments and state government departments?
No, it will not legislate for state government departments. Even for the central government departments, it can at best say that we will have a citizens' charter in every department, and then let the formulation of the charter for each department be decentralized to that department. Similarly, depending on whether the legislative competence is there or not, for instance, Team Anna has raised an issue, and I think they are broadly right, that public grievances can be addressed as a legislation by the centre. In fact, the 1968 law had public grievances as a part of the
Quite
law.
right. It can
and therefore, it can in principle say the centre and the states will have it. For each state, the details of that public grievances citizens charter will have to be worked out by the states itself.
And it's possible that if the centre were to propose an enabling charter for the states can reject it or accept it. It's up to each state to decide as it wants.
If the centre gives a binding law, depending on the assumption that it has the public grievances jurisdiction in the centre, then it will be binding on the state. And if it's of the opinion, and that's what the central government's lawyers advise them, that you don't have legislative competence, in that event it will have to give an enabling law under Article 252.
Which the states can either accept or reject.
Obviously, we are a federal polity, and areas which fall within the states itself will be entitled to. But let me tell you here.
Let me interrupt.
No, let me just tell you here. State after state in this area is ahead of the centre. Already some half a dozen states have already legislated.
Quite right. But there are others that haven't.
Yeah.
As a former law minister, tell me, on this Citizens' Charter and the redressal grievance system, should Parliament create a binding law, or would that be an infringement of the federal structure as far as the states are concerned?
I still have to work on it on detail. Let me be honest about this. I have only the word of Team Anna. They say they've examined it and they felt that the centre has jurisdiction. I myself on this area have to apply my mind still.
So it's quite possible that when you apply your mind, you'll come to the conclusion that the centre cannot legislate for the states.
It is possible. In that event, it will have to be an enabling.
All right. Whether the centre can or cannot legislate for the states in terms of Citizen Charter is a grey area. You have to make up your mind about it. Let's come to the Lokayuks. Can the Parliament in Delhi create through legislation Lokayuks for the states, or would that be a breach of the federal structure?
You see, the Lokayukt in the states will have two possible powers. One will be in relation to the powers to prosecute. There it appears that in the concurrent list, entry 1 and 2 deals with criminal law and criminal law procedures, the CRPC and the Penal Code. And therefore, these are areas of central law where the centre can create. Equally, I am absolutely clear, and I have discussed it even both with the central government and with Team Anna, in dealing with the bureaucracy of the states, that is the civil service of the state and administrative actions against the civil service of the state, the centre has no jurisdiction. Therefore, that part of the law can never be binding on the states, and a Lokayukt being created for that can only be an enabling law.
Now, therefore, what you said is that for a very small aspect of the Lokayukt for the states, which deals with criminal law, the centre can legislate, but for the much bigger aspects, which deals with state government employees, investigations into them, the centre cannot legislate.
I would not use the word small or big, but I would say for specific subjects. Therefore, I am reasonably certain that in dealing with the law for dealing with the bureaucracy of the states and administrative action against them, inquiries against them, is a matter which lies in the domain of the states.
And therefore, for all of that, the centre cannot legislate.
The centre can at best have an enabling law or a model law.
And an enabling law can be either accepted or rejected as the states want.
Absolutely.
And since most people believe the Lokayuk's real job will be handling the bureaucracy of the states, that area the centre cannot legislate.
And when Team Anna's members met me, I put this across to them, and I must say some of them did realize the difficulty, because to create a Lokayukt institution, we must also respect the federal polity of India.
All right. But what you've said, and I'm just summing up for the audience, is that there is a grey area regarding Citizens' Charter and grievance redressal, whether the centre can or cannot legislate for the states. You need to make up your mind, you need to do your research. But when it comes to Lokayukt, for a very large part of the Lokayukt's work, which is dealing with state bureaucracies, the centre cannot legislate.
For one part of the Lokayukt.
Absolutely. And at best it can offer an enabling law which the centre...
I'm quite clear about it.
Which the states can accept or reject. Let's then come to the third sticking point that Anna has identified, which is bringing the lower bureaucracy under the Lokpal. This Parliament in principle has agreed to do by way of an appropriate mechanism. What does the BJP, or better still, what does Arun Jaitley, the former law minister of the BJP, believe is the appropriate mechanism that's best needed?
I think legislating on a contentious area at times is also an art of the possible, particularly when you have too many conflicting views. I have absolutely no difficulty with Team Anna's proposals that the entire bureaucracy can come under the Lokpal. I have absolutely no difficulty, and in principle, both I and my party accept it. We'll prefer that. If, however, while drafting it, the standing committee comes out with any other alternative proposal,
like Aruna Roy's version,
for instance, like Aruna Roy's version, which also, in all fairness to her, says that even though the vigilance mechanisms deals with the lower bureaucracy, the vigilance mechanism functions under the administrative control of the Lokpal.
Administrative.
The administrative control of the Lokpal. There's a third option. The third option is let the vigilance mechanism look after the lower bureaucracy with an right of appeal to the Lokpal. Therefore, it again has a linkage to the Lokpal.
Any of these three could be acceptable to the BJP.
According to me, while legislating and finding out when contentious opinions are there, I am quite flexible. But my preference under the present circumstances perhaps would be the first proposal.
The first preference be directly under the Lokpal.
Which is the Team Anna's proposal.
But what you're also indicating is depending upon the balance of opinion that emerges either from the standing committee or emerges on the floor of the House, the BJP would be happy to go with options 2 or 3.
We are not wanting in this area to create a make or break situation. We want the institution of Lokpal to proceed further, and this is not the core of the whole Lokpal debate.
So you have in fact an open mind on the appropriate mechanism that brings the lower bureaucracy under the Lokpal. It doesn't necessarily have to be the way Anna wants it. It could be Aruna Roy's
I have a
way
preference
also.
In favor of what Anna says.
But you're prepared to go the other way.
I would urge all to now, since we've agreed on the principles, to deal with it in an open mind so that by the winter session we can effectively legislate.
So what this then amounts to when you look back collectively on Anna Hazare's 3 principal sticking points is that the BJP's position is by no means a complete acceptance of Anna Hazare's stand.
No, let me tell you, towards the end, as our own position evolved, and I must say in all fairness, Team Anna was also quite reasonable on many issues. They also moderated their position. There is an extreme close proximity to the position, and broadly positions of various groups, even I found in the case of the Aruna Roy proposals, positions were converging in one direction.
Except that assumes something that is not known to the public but is known to you, that the reason positions converged is because not only was BJP moving, but more importantly, Anna Hazare and his team were coming down and scaling down. They were coming closer to you.
No, it's not closer to us. It was closer to something which was more pragmatic.
Quite right.
For instance.
I won't go into details because that will confuse the audience, but the important point you're making is that pragmatism was dawning on them, and so they were coming down from their original demands to demands that were more acceptable for Parliament.
For instance, Article 105, Article 311, federal polity, these are all principles they also chose to respect.
I'll come to all of those in a moment's time because those are areas of the Jan Lokpal that were not covered by the sense of the House statement. I'll come to them in a moment's time. But the key issue on Anna Hazare's 3 sticking points is that the BJP has accepted them in principle, but in terms of detail, you have some important differences with Anna.
No, I would not use the word differences. We have a great amount of agreement with them. I think, but we are being flexible so that finally when the legislation is drafted, we are in a position to move forward.
All right. Pragmatism is the mood of the moment.
Without compromising on the basics.
Let's take a break and come back and talk about areas of the Jan Lokpal outside the sense of the House statement. How close or how far apart is the BJP and Anna Hazare? That's in a moment's time. Don't go away. Welcome back to Devil's Advocate and an interview with the leader of the opposition in the Rajya Sabha, former BJP Law Minister Arun Jaitley. Arun Jaitley, let's come to aspects of the Jan Lokpal bill that are not covered by the sense of the House statement. Am I right in saying that there are 2 aspects of Anna Hazare's original Jan Lokpal that are not acceptable to the BJP, bringing the higher judiciary under the Lokpal as well as the doings and sayings and voting and speeches of MPs were on the floor of the House? Neither of those are acceptable to you.
No, they were never acceptable to us. And we made it clear to Team Anna, and I'm quite glad to say that in my meetings with them, they have completely moderated their position. They are agreeable for an alternative mechanism for judicial accountability. They are fully willing to respect the spirit of Article 105 of the Constitution, which deals with privileges of MPs inside the House.
As I said earlier in part 1, these are things they've said to you. They haven't made them clear to the outside public. I accept your word for it. But as far as the outside public are concerned, these are still critical demands they're making.
These are known to me. And therefore, I'm quite convinced that our stand and their stand isn't radically different.
Another area where the BJP and Anna Hazare have critical differences is that you are not prepared to give the Lokpal power to tap phones, nor are you prepared for the Lokpal to have disciplinary control over government employees.
Two different matters. As far as disciplinary rights are concerned, Article 311 has to be respected. We've insisted, the government has insisted, Team Anna in principle when they met us have accepted this. I don't think there is any difference of opinion between anyone. As far as taping of telephones is concerned, I said on the floor of the House and I told this to Team Anna, I'm extremely uncomfortable because we can tape phones only in extreme situations like national security. You can't have the Lokpal taping the phones of the Prime Minister of India who's covered by Lokpal.
Quite right. So on those two issues, you don't agree with them.
Only on the issue of taping of phones. On the issue of disciplinary proceedings, our stand after they have moderated their position has converged substantially.
But again, when you talk about moderating their position, that's something that's known to you because of your private conversation.
To me. No, it's not a private conversation. It's a conversation between Team Anna and the BJP leadership. We both made our position.
Quite right. But Anna Hazare hasn't made their position clear to the public. Now, a third area is the PM. Both of you agree that the PM must come under the Lokpal, but you have accepted the need for certain exclusions to do with defense, national security, possibly going by your speech in Parliament, even foreign affairs. At the moment, has Anna Hazare accepted that those
exclusions are necessary? They may not have said this publicly, but again, in our meetings with them, I think they are equally clear. They are a responsible group. They are equally clear, and they said so. They have no difficulty, provided these exceptions are carved out with some element of discretion.
One last area which I haven't touched on, but it is critical. Should the security services, the army, for instance, the police, come under the Lokpal?
I think that some of these services have their own disciplinary court, the court martials or other courts. And I think we must respect their autonomy and their importance in national security and carve them out as an exception.
Did you discuss this with Anna Hazare and team when they called her?
Post Anna's fast, I have discussed it. They are extremely keen that defense purchases should be covered by the Lokpal. I think they are right. But as far as armed forces, etc. are concerned, I think there is a good case for keeping them out.
What about the CBI?
Well, this is a vexed issue as to whether the CBI should be the investigating agency of the Lokpal or must function independently. This is an area which still requires a further debate, and therefore after discussing with them plus within my own party, only then I would be in a position to make a firm comment.
So at the moment the BJP hasn't made up its mind?
I think we have to hear everybody, including the CBI administration, on this issue before committing ourselves to a change in the CBI structure. I'd rather prefer an autonomous CBI, but I think a lot of discussion on this is required.
All right. Let's then come to the position that now emerges, which is to do with the nature of relationship between the BJP and Anna Hazare. Your party president, Nitin Gadkari, has gone on record to say that the BJP will always be ready to rally around you and, more importantly, march forward under your leadership.
I think the reference is to an anti-corruption movement. It's not a movement of political parties. It's even unlike the JP movement. Therefore, since Anna has led this movement, I think this movement is a positive development. It's a kind of support to the spirit of that movement.
But are you prepared, Arun Jaitley, to march under Anna's leadership?
I don't think it's a question of a political leadership because he's not in the business of politics.
So this is just metaphorical?
It's metaphorical in the sense that he supports his leadership in this battle against corruption.
So this is just metaphor or symbol. It's not an acceptance of a new party leader?
It's not an acceptance of a new party leader. He's not in party politics. He doesn't accept my party. We have not accepted his political leadership. But in the battle of corruption, he's become a symbol. And there is no difficulty at all in honoring him on that.
Now, Kiran Bedi publicly said that what the press considers her Nautanki act was a game changer because as a result, LK Advani picked up the phone and rang her and committed the BJP to supporting the Jan Lokpal. As you've explained to me, actually, what you're supporting is a version which has Anna Hazare's team making considerable concessions based on pragmatism and coming closer to you, as a result of which there is a convergence. So did Mr. Advani actually at some point commit the BJP to the original Jan Lokpal, or has Kiran Bedi misunderstood?
Let me tell you, for me the crucial factor is the BJP leaders' collective meeting with Team Anna. They moderated their position, we moderated our position, and our positions became extremely close to each other. And I think the fact of supporting them on those issues became clear. And when Sushma Swaraj and I moved resolutions in both houses of Parliament for a vote, we had all those 9 ingredients, the major ingredients on which we agreed with them as a part of that resolution. And they supported it, we supported those 9 points.
Arun Jaitley, thank you very much indeed, and thank you in particular for clarifying that on many significant issues, Anna Hazare and the BJP have converged. Anna Hazare, as a result, has taken a more pragmatic position. This may not be formally known to the public, but you have revealed it today for the first time. Thank you very much.